if your goal is to help more people, like the more people you help, the more you should be compensated. But as a physical therapist, you get into it to help more people. And if your schedule's not full, how are you helping people? So like,
hey, welcome back to the Dave Kittle Show. Today we have my buddy Eric Broadworth, physical therapist, owner of Fuel Physical Therapy, now Fuel Health and Wellness. Eric, we've been talking about a few things behind the scenes. I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to try to ask for some free equity.
all right.
I was thinking when I was preparing, I was making a little, tea and some honey and getting my voice ready because I was coming off some allergies and all. And I was like, man, and I'm not doing coaching anymore, so please don't reach out for coaching. But I was coaching Eric years ago on going from like your W-2 job to your cash-based practice. And I was thinking, man, I should have, whatever you paid, it was thousands of dollars, like whatever you paid, it should have also been like, and 25% of your business, like because it was nothing at the time. Like every startup is nothing. And I was like, man, I don't know why coaches don't do that.
I'm going to tell you this is probably why. One, do you want that headache? Like, so you've got people who are going to do well, but do you want that headache of 25% ownership and you're putting risk on this person is going to be successful and they're going to have their business still that you can sell at the end of it and make that money back? Or do you want 25% of their headaches and then they're not good to work with? You don't like, probably, I guess you can put in options, right? As far as like, hey, I have a chance to get out at year 1, 3, and 5 and 10. I don't know. I'm making this up, right? But like, that's something I've personally thought about with other businesses and stuff. And it's like, oh, do I want this headache of this person? But I think it works out well when it works out well, you know?
You're right. Cause there were a bunch of folks that just flat out respectfully they just weren't cut out to do entrepreneurship. Yeah. There was a few like you, Eric Otero, Brett Scott, Joey Rossi, Zia Dadul, like a bunch of folks that are just crushing it. And I was like, man, if I had like 10, 20%, distributions or equity split of all the, of many of those practices that started from nothing or whatever, but whatever, all is well. We were talking about, your future plans and what you want to do with Fuel. And also before this, I was like, well, I got to ask you, like, so are you going to open up a second location in Michigan? Are you going to go second location in
third location in Michigan?
Okay, I'm sorry. Third location.
Yeah.
Michigan, you have 2 already. Is it going to be, maybe it's in Metro Detroit, maybe it's in Chicago, maybe it's in New York City down the street from me. I don't know.
Yeah. Have you heard of a BHAG?
Yeah, sure.
Big, hairy, audacious goal for listeners who don't know what a BHAG is. So big, hairy, audacious goal. It's,
Collins?
Yeah. Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0. Jim Collins, right? Jim Collins, I believe.
Tom Collins is the drink.
Yeah. You can have a Tom Collins while listening or reading Jim Collins. But, yeah, so big, hairy, audacious goal, which I think every business should have to shoot for and strive for. And ours is to be the largest primary out-of-network provider in the country is what we are going for. So we've got 2 locations right now. Our goal is to have more, obviously. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, to be honest, I was hoping to be opening a third here in 2025. That's not going to be happening in 25 for just a number of reasons, but hopefully in 26 we'll be opening up our third. Is the goal there. Yeah.
So do you think that Jeff Moore's Onward Health is the biggest? I think that's what he said.
Probably. Yeah. I'm shooting for that. I'm shooting for larger.
Yeah. They're the largest out of network self-pay practice in the country. But yeah. I don't know, like, so there's different ways to think about that, right? Like, they are the largest. Mm-hmm. And I don't know specifically, but I would guess that, let's just say if you and I wanted to open up our own Onward Health location, I believe that Onward is going to make it maybe owns a small percentage of it, or they have some revenue or some profit sharing or something where, like, because the therapist to start from nothing to like ramp up, they need, $100,000, $200,000 or whatever of like income to like eventually sustain themselves over time. So
do they supplement that?
I don't know. I mean, like my point is like, I don't know. I doubt it's 50-50 is what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm not on the inside. I'm just guessing. Like, I'm guessing that if I wanted to open up in the New York City area, an Onward location, I don't know the numbers. I didn't speak to Jeff about this, but I would assume that I own 70 to 80% of that location.
I would agree with that based on some information that I have heard. I don't know numbers, but I believe that, I mean, it is a franchise model, so you are paying royalties in some fashion.
And there's some similarities and differences, but I've also heard therapists call it a licensing model.
Yeah.
I mean, it's similar, but there's some differences.
Licensing meaning it's not a traditional franchise, correct? But you're taking the name and that kind of thing.
Right. So like you get access to probably their, I don't know, courses.
That's essentially what we're looking to do with Fuel, is that kind of model where it's like you're given all the resources and everything like that. That's something that I'm looking to do, and then have other owners. Because for those who are listening that are business owners, like, it's a lot to bite off if you're 100% owner, and the more you grow, it's a lot. It's a lot with you.
Yeah. So you're doing some interesting stuff. It's not just physical therapy though, right?
You're talking at Fuel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do physical therapy, red light therapy, assisted stretching. We do weight loss. We do massage. So we have like a variety of services. And it's all based around helping people live active, healthy, pain-free lives. That's kind of our purpose, our cause, And so everything that we do has to fit into that. Anything that we invest in has to help people live active, healthy, pain-free lives. If it doesn't do that, then we need to reevaluate on why we're even considering it and likely back out.
Yeah. What percentage of revenue do you think is the red light therapy weight loss program?
I mean,
Is it
each
like
device
2% or?
Each device pulls in like around 10 grand. So in revenue. So, and that's with cross selling and things like that. So, I mean, we just did numbers in Granville, and I want to say it was just our yearly. I don't know. We had like around, I think, just under $8 grand in Granville in revenue on the one bed, last month. So that's kind of rough numbers as to what those bring in, which is nice. And then all you got to pay is like a tack, ideally, to wipe it down, get people on the next bed, tell them when their appointment is next, that kind of thing.
Is it expensive on the utility side, like on the electricity side?
A few cents a run or something like that. It's nothing crazy.
So it's not like for me for us in the summer, like I like to run the air conditioner almost nonstop.
I mean, is it going to run your electrical bill up a little bit? Sure, but like if I'm making your margins are there, you're gonna be okay, right? It costs me about $1,000 a month roughly to finance it, and then if you're making 8 to 1 on that, ads cost me another $1,000 to $2,000 a month. So even right there, you're 3,000. I'm still making $5 grand. I'm doing okay on it.
Are you still using stealth media for ads?
Yeah, they help us with our physical therapy ads. Red Light Systems does the ads for red light therapy. Specific.
That's like 2 marketing agencies for 2 different.
Yeah, I mean, Stealth is going to specialize really in specifically like physical therapy, in those kind of ads. Red Light Systems only does red light therapy. So I am a partner in Red Light Systems. Zach Baydoun, who is a partner and he's the marketing guru. What I really respect about Zach is like a lot of things, but he specifically like will only do red light therapy, and he has turned down deals for other services where he could have easily probably made some like good money, but he's like, this isn't going to work. This is what we specialize in, and wants to stay in his lane. And I would say he probably does a better job of that than me, where I'll get shiny objects. Like, oh yeah, I can do it. Yeah, bring it on, right? And then you're like, oh, was that worth the money? Sometimes I got to learn that the hard way.
Gotcha. Do you think that most, or some, I don't know, some critical mass of physical therapy practices will eventually have red light therapy in their practice? Whether it, and maybe you can break it down with like you have two different devices, and one's like a full bed, and one's like those panels or whatever, like those pieces.
Yeah. So will most people have red light therapy devices? I'm going to say no. And the reason being is like, I don't like most PT business owners are too scared to take on the financial commitment. And if they do, honestly, they're going to put their toe in the water. They're going to go with a more affordable option, right? Like you're going to go cheap and see if it works, but they're then not going to be successful because they're not going all in. Does that make sense? There's something about putting your back against the wall and going for it to where you're going to be more successful. And whether that's even going to like from the part-time hustle to the full-time, right? Like you can't build a full-time caseload when you're part-time. You eventually have to like take that jump. It's the same thing with the red light stuff, where it's like, if you want the best device, you're going to have to probably finance it. If you don't have the cash, most people are going to have to finance it, and you're going to have to take that leap, and then you're going to have to come up with a plan and like make it work. But everyone's different as far as like where their business is. I do think the majority of physical therapy businesses, I think that they do have to adapt and incorporate some type of cash practice and cash services, even in like your insurance-based models. You see more and more of them trying to do it. And I think ultimately that's where things are going in order to stay afloat. You can't be taking 17% cuts from Blue Cross Blue Shield. That cut right there is going to put some businesses out of business. Like that's the reality. And especially like Medicare cuts, right? That's another 2.5%. So between those two right there, you're at over 19% cuts on your revenue. That's you got to make that up somewhere just to maintain your margin, and not even talking about then further growth. And so I do think that whether it's red light, shockwave, personal training services, assisted stretching, something like, we have to grow as a profession away from relying on insurance, which is why, our goal is to be the largest primary auto network provider, because I think it's very, very difficult to be an in-network and just do PT model. Like even if we were to start accepting insurances and we wanted to go that route, we're still going to have to do something for cash pay in order to make things work.
Yeah, because you mentioned you were like considering like the possibility of acquiring some local in-network practice just for that, maybe more for the volume. But you know that if you don't have the ethical cross sells, if you don't have the other offerings of like, hey, like patient A, like you invest in your health and wellness, you're a runner, you're a CrossFit or whatever. Like we also have these other things, and like this is great. But like if you also added, this is self-pay, but if you also use this during your physical therapy, like it would, like this is the fast lane, or you could do the slow lane, which is fine. Like that's just what your insurance covers. Maybe there'll be
it was someone on your show. I believe it was someone on your show, or maybe we talked about this, what they call it. Not the slow lane, but the basic package, right? Like you want the bare bones minimum. Here's what it is. You were talking to someone about that. I'm like, I love that. Do you know what I'm saying though?
Well, I remember Tony Maritato was saying the bare minimum recently, and I started using that on the calls, like with perspective.
Maybe that was it. Maybe it was Tony Maritato. Yeah.
Because the slow lane, I know it kind of sounds like negative, right?
Yeah. But
who wants to take the slow lane if they're, they have pain or some issue?
Yeah. I don't know. I love that. It's like, hey, do you want to like drag this out and hopefully you get better? Or like you want results and you want it to happen fast? Give me the results fast. Perfect. Here's what you need to do. I need to use that more, but I love that analogy because it's true. And it is true.
What have you seen with that conversation with folks in like the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. I mean, I can't recall, but like it's somewhat of, is it like some suburban, some urban there in Grand Rapids, like in terms of like overall, like average income and that type of stuff, or just like active folks that are like, they're going to invest and pay out of pocket versus the folks that are just traditionally like insurance seeking type patients?
I would say a lot of people here are traditional insurance seeking. Our market is not special. You know, I would say like income wise, it falls under that like median income. You have certain pockets that definitely have more money than others. Our location right downtown though attracts, I would say, both like your people who are very much on a budget and your people who have that extra income. But it really depends. Like, it's funny, you'll get those people in your door where it's like, there's no way that this person's going to convert and spend this kind of money. And then they don't blink, and they do, because they very much value their health. And then you have the other people where it's like, you watch them roll up in, you know, a sit car and like dressed well, and you see their title as far as what they do for an occupation. You're like, oh, this is gonna be easy. And then they're like, nope, not doing it. I'm like, what? Like, so I try to never, you know, judge a book by its cover and stuff, and never count my chickens before they hatch. But we get all types here, but it is very much like a hospital owned as far as like area. So there's a lot of very big hospital systems that own a lot of like the patient population. Like they'll go there first, right? And then they give it to their PTs. And the rest of the PTs are kind of, I would say, fighting for crumbs, so to speak. But more and more people are going direct, using direct access. Word's getting out a lot better here, I would say. And more cash-based PTs are popping up. Like, it's been pretty wild to see. I'll do a Google search every now and then. It's like, oh, I've never heard of this physical therapy place. Like, oh, another cash-based PT popped up. So there are quite a few in the area.
So with that, the biggest challenge is definitely the actual therapist. Like if you're talking about multiple locations or more than the 2 locations that you have, the biggest challenge is not just finding more physical therapists, but then also finding physical therapists that can manage and they want to have some help, but they also want to have some skin in the game. They want to have some equity in.
Are you talking about like growth now? We're talking about like growing the business.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so the physical therapy, so people that I look for my business specifically are more type A people. Like I want people who don't necessarily want a clock in, clock out job, unless maybe it's like a tech position, right? But they're willing to go above and beyond. Those are really the people that we need in our business. And then as far as like physical therapists go, I need them to practice what they preach, be more health conscious as far as like active. You don't have to be a CrossFitter while we're in a CrossFit box. Does that give you a bonus if you're like applying? Then yeah, but like have some experience working with athletes, ideally, and really have a drive to get better every day and 1% better every day, whether that's your professional life, your personal life. Like, you got to have that drive, and like that's what we want our therapists coming to the table with. And then as far as like, you know, in investment, we are exploring options of like having people to buy into fuel. Like if they want to start their own fuel, that is very much an option. And I talked to my PTs about that from day one. Like when they interview, like, hey, if you want growth, I'm here to support you with your growth. I'm not here to hold you back. You want to go start your business? Like, that's fine. I'm going to show you some of the ins and outs. You want to partner and you want to make it easier on yourself? I'm here for that conversation too. You know, I think that too many business owners will, I don't know, if they limit people's like personal growth and business growth, right? Like ultimately at the end of the day, I understand that everyone needs to do what's best for them and their family. And how do I best support them and where they're at now and where they want to go? And ultimately, I think like we'll be paid back, but having those options for them to invest if they want ownership, what does that look like? Because then they do have more skin in the game. And I think it will help propel you forward quicker. Does that make sense?
So, no, yeah, it does make sense. I can't recall. I think when I talked to Jeff Moore, I think they do something like that. Like whatever their average cost of like build out, what was your cost, not including the red light therapy, for the second location? What was the cost of the build out and, you know, down payment for like the first or last?
I put everything on like credit cards and stuff. So we get like $20,000 into credit cards and stuff.
It wasn't like 100K or more.
Well, I mean, by the time I put some of the equipment in it and that I financed, yeah, it was more than the 100K because like the red light bed and laser device, I don't know, that was running me like I got a deal on it, but like 80, 90 grand for that bundle right there. So right there and just that equipment before I build anything out. I want to say paint, like to paint the place ran me $7,000, right? Like I want to say I was a little over like 6 figures for sure. Signage, another several $1,000s. When you include a lot of the equipment, I don't know, probably looking at 150 grand, maybe 200 grand.
Okay, so let's just say let's say you have a rock star therapist that's like, I want to pony up some money. I want to be your therapist to manage the third location. Maybe you've already coached them already. Maybe they worked with you. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they were a student with you. I don't know, whatever. And it's going to be 150 grand for the third location on average. Whatever it took for the second location is going to be similar to for the third location. Now, over time, you get, learn more and you can negotiate more. Maybe you can knock it down a little bit, but just say 150K, half of that, if they want to own 50% or 49% or whatever of the third location, then they can put up 49% of the money. Now, of course, you're still going to provide extra value with like all the coaching and
systems,
everything, and all that, which then that could be, maybe they put up some of that, maybe they put up 49% of the money, but then they own 35% of the location, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's different ways to do it for sure. I mean, you got to look at what each person's bringing to the table. I mean, I'm not opposed to just owning 10% either, and then they own 90%. It's how much of how much support do they want? How much ownership do they want? Then what does that look like? Obviously, numbers, like you got to figure out to build out and everything like that. But like, honestly, I'm not opposed to just taking a minority ownership in it and then them taking the majority, because again, it's less headache on me and things like that when it comes down to it. Because as you know, different fires have to be put out every day. And so who's ultimately in charge of putting out those fires, right? So.
Yeah. And so that's you and I, we could own, I could own 100% of concierge pain relief. You could own 100% of, fuel health and wellness. But then over time, it's like, unless you raise, there's only certain ways to get there. Let's say, you and I, we each want to go to, 5 locations and 10 locations and onward, past that. It's either going to take the sweat equity from partners, like the therapists that we were just talking about, that are going to come in, they're going to cut a check, they're going to learn like, hey, this is kind of entrepreneurship. This is, partly your business. Now you're a partner. Or, you do the other route, you raise millions of dollars, which is not easy at all. It takes some folks their whole life to even build that track record, where then you go and you buy other locations, which is kind of like the tried and true method of the buyers that go and scoop up and consolidate all the in-network players. There's just not anyone doing it, obviously, for the out-of-network self-pay. But Jeff Moore seems like they have it figured out, because he was describing on my show, they have all these courses, and then the instructors kind of identify who are the people that are taking the therapists that are taking the courses. Mm-hmm. Some of them eventually reach out to, open up a location. And then Jeff goes and looks at the documentation or whatever, the notes from the instructors, like, hey, how was this guy? How was this physical therapist, Eric Broadworth? They really participated in the course. They asked questions. They were positive. They were prompt. They were, dressed professionally, talk professionally, whatever, or not. And so he uses the courses to find candidates for the future locations on, which is it's genius.
It is a genius idea. I mean, it's his feeder system, right? Into you have this model where you have the courses right through ICE and everything like that. And then those clinicians, that they're going to think the same way. So then again, think of McDonald's, right? Like every McDonald's is the same, where all these clinicians are going to think about problems the same way. I would imagine if I go to Onward Grand Rapids here versus Onward Madison, that I'm going to get very similar treatment because they've taken the same courses and they think about problems the same way. So it's a great idea. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that other businesses like haven't done the same, like some of these bigger ones, right? Even because they have their own continuing ed, but well, I guess they bring in their own continuing ed. But if they just put their continuing ed in-house and said, hey, you want to open up a IV rehab, right? Or something like that. But then they have their own IV rehab courses that you can take that's separate. I'm surprised more businesses haven't done that. It's a great idea. And kudos to Jeff for figuring that out. Cause I mean, I think he really struck the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah. And I had made a joke with Tony Maritato and Jimmy McKay that I think I don't know if I said this publicly on the Breakfast Club. I think I did that. I said, is Jeff Moore the Ray Kroc of physical therapy? So Ray Kroc was not the original founder of McDonald's. Remember that there was a Michael Keaton documentary or movie on Netflix called Founder?
Yep.
And Ray Kroc was the one that was like, he couldn't believe these.
He took the McDonald's brothers idea and he systematized it and then spread it and then took all that, like they got paid pennies, man. He kind of screwed them over, but yeah.
Yeah. So what folks, I don't think realize, and Jeff mentioned this on my show, is that he's also having, like he's buying the locations, the office locations of where current or future Onward locations are going.
Is he owning the real estate?
Yes.
Oh, damn. I didn't know that.
So he mentioned on my show, I forget the name. It was
that's huge. That is huge.
So he's got the whole system of like the pipeline of therapists where they
have his own commercial real estate business then on the side too, then.
Exactly. So yeah, and the commercial real estate is something like, fitness forward real estate. It's something like that. Like, some physical therapy.
That is genius.
And I don't know if that's the cash flow from Onward, if it's the cash from the courses, or if he's raising money. I don't know if he's raising money and that is
how it's funneling it. Yeah.
It's like a syndicate. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you need some serious cash flow to be able to do that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's what Ray Kroc did with McDonald's in terms of the big part of the show or that movie was when Ray Kroc's lawyer said, Ray, you're not in the hamburger business. You're in the real estate business. And so even though we know Jeff Moore as the physical therapist, clinical excellence, he used to go live every day for years and do, joint mobilizations and techniques. And he'd be treating like a student or a colleague or someone in his office, and he would stream it live on Twitter and Periscope back when Periscope was on Twitter and, live video and all that. But he's got the therapist side with where the therapists come from, the pipeline of therapists who are then filtered, they're educated, they're filtered through their courses. They identify the all-stars, basically. Some of them self-select, raise their hand. They want to open up a new location wherever. And then he's flying around, finding locations. But he mentioned on my show that, they're also funding and buying the real estate of which the locations will be built on.
Yeah.
Which is, it's like it's another business, obviously.
It is. That's a whole nother business. Good for him. That's awesome.
So what are the thoughts? I mean, I'm kind of, it's partially tongue in cheek about getting some free equity off of you, but at the same time, it's like, how could we, because it takes the therapist side. It takes, there's some money, there's some risk. How can that be spread across other therapists that are coming in? I do think you and I and the self-pay and the out-of-network practices, I do think that might be one of the better approaches as opposed to historically was these in-network offices 10 years ago, 15, 20, 25 years ago. It would be owned by 1 to 4 or 5 partners. And then they just grew it to dozens of locations. And then some of them, they sold out or whatever. And they were bought by the bigger practices. I think because of Now it's a different payer model. It's the self-pay where the actual client is paying, which is great. I love it. You and I love it. But it's harder in some ways in terms of like access and growth and all that.
I think the hardest part is there's definitely different challenges when it comes to the self-pay kind of out-of-network model. So the speed bumps that I've found that you run into are, one, like, we can really only treat, I mean, you could treat more than one at a time, but can really only treat one at a time, right? That's what we tout, is everything's one-on-one. Well, when you're only treating one-on-one and then you get to this capacity where you need to bring on a new clinician, I feel like it is more difficult only treating a one-on-one to then bring on a new clinician and get them loaded up. That's one of the challenges I feel that, like, I've found, is because you don't want someone twiddling their thumbs and stuff like that. So being able to, versus if you're treating even 1.5 or 2 patients a day, you take those overlaps and you just shift them over, right? It's an easy thing to do. But when you're all one-on-one, there's no patients necessarily to shift over. You can shift them over, then go out and do marketing and things like that. But you still end up with this labor issue as far as that goes, as far as the cost of labor goes. So that's one thing that I found is difficult. The other thing that I found is difficult as far as like bringing on clinicians would be a lot of, you got to make sure, again, going back to, I look for type A people. You got to make sure you have the right people that fit your culture and what you need. What does not work well, at least with my business, and you could tell me if you're wrong, but are the ones who want to come in, like check in, check out. They have their full caseload like set up for them when they come in, and they go in, they treat, and they're done for the day. I mean, kind of like the hospital systems have set up, right? So if that's what the person is expecting, you're going to have 2 different expectations on either side. So making sure that that's very clear before someone starts, I have found that can be a problem as well. And then, yeah, I mean, I think making sure clinicians have skin in the game. So one of the things that we're shifting to right now is a compensation-based model. So I've talked to, I know it was a few places that do it, and they seem to be successful. So instead of people, paying people a straight salary necessarily, we're going more towards that compensation model where it's like, you're going to be a little hungry if you want to get paid, right? And it doesn't have to be that you have to go, I don't expect you to go and have to work 60 hours a week, but it's like doing the little things of like following up with your people and making sure that they're getting back on for another appointment, just doing the little things to make sure that your schedule is for the most part full. And I don't expect anything crazy. I want you 80% full or more. And with this model that we're going to, if clinicians are 80% full or more, they're getting paid significantly higher than if they were like even salary. So making sure that they see that. So that's kind of what we're doing right now.
So the eat what you kill model. So they're being compensated for the most part based off of the completed visit or completed interaction.
Yeah. We used to like bonus for example, like packages. Like I would bonus a small percentage of the package that they sold and collect it up front. But now we're just going straight off of like, we're getting rid of that. And it's just strictly per session, you get a percentage, which equates out to more than fair. I make my margins, and then they make very good pay based on what they when they see those people. But it's meant to like even out. So there are going to be times where they're going to be empty, or they might have to do some free sessions or whatever. But then it's meant to average out a bit.
What's the percentage split, and how'd you come up with it?
So we're going to be trialing 33% split. They get 33%. I came up with 33% because we need to make 3 to 4x, right? As far as like revenue based on what the clinician brings in order to grow the business. So with our rates are higher. They're getting paid very well at 33% as far as like the dollarly amount, the dollar hourly amount. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I pay my therapist. I have one that's W-2, but he's still paid, and most are 1099, but the W-2 is still paid like per hour, but it's still like per completed visit, right? So think that's where we're at as a profession, especially for the self-pay out-of-network practices. And it's he's paid per visit basically like a 4-unit Medicare visit would pay a practice owner. Mm-hmm. So he's basically being paid like what a Medicare Part B practice owner makes.
Yeah.
But he's incentivized to continue, and he wants to, build a schedule and if there's any pushback, then what I do, and I don't know if you've done this, but earlier this year, I think I did it last year too. I'll do it from time to time when I'm in person with my therapist. I'll pull up my Google ads, and I'll be like, here's what I'm spending right now. Like, here's what I spent yesterday. Here's what I spent on Google ads. Like, this is where this person came from, and this person, and remember this other person you evaluated, this is where they came from. Now this one came from, a shared, a physician referral or whatever. But this one was from a Google ad, this one was from a Google ad, and like, here's how much I'm spending. And they're like, whoa, it's like, yeah, it's like a lot of money. So
I still don't think they get it though, to be honest. Like, yes, they'll be like, oh, that's a lot of money, but they just, a lot of employees just think that money comes, oh, well, that's no problem because you're pulling in this amount per day, right? And they don't see like, I mean, shit, our labor right now is running $45,000 a month. So yeah, like they hear those numbers, but I don't think they really feel it unless it hits your own paycheck. Does that make sense? Like when it starts to hit your own bank account, whether that's positive or negative, like you don't really feel it then. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So yeah, I mean, the way I phrase it, I'm like, this is a win-win for everyone. Because if you do well, like you're going to be compensated very fairly. You're going to be compensated well, and it's going to be directly proportionate to primarily like your efforts. Like you want to do more. Like we've really started this year doing a lot of events. Like you want to go volunteer at these events and help bring people in. Like you're going to be compensated well, right? And yeah, you're not necessarily, especially now with this model, like you're not going to be paid at those events, but you in a sense are, because now you've got new lead flow coming onto your schedule, and you get to fill up your schedule that way. So yeah.
Yeah. And then there's other owners that pay their therapists for doing those pop up, tents and health fairs or whatever, and they'll pay them for that. But then they can't pay them the same hourly rate or the 33% of self-pay collections that you can do. So it all evens out. I think therapists, I think they care less about, am I being paid 30%, 33%, 50% of whatever the self-pay rate, whatever it is. I think what they really care about, and you kind of just said it, which is like whatever is, hitting them, like what's hitting their bank account. That's what they really care about.
Yeah, I think therapists are an interesting group. I think you have some people who are hungry to make some more money,
but most are risk averse. Most want like a steady paycheck. They want like that's who was screened and filtered to even get into the profession on the high school to college like admission process. That's part of it.
Yeah, they want a steady paycheck. They want to help people. Yeah, definitely more risk averse. So but yeah, I mean, if you do want to make some extra money and help more people, which I really believe though too, like if your goal is to help more people, like the more people you help, the more you should be compensated. But as a physical therapist, you get into it to help more people. And if your schedule's not full, how are you helping people? So like go fill up your schedule, right? And then get compensated for it.
What are your therapists? Are they doing 7, 8, 10 visits a day, or some of them doing like traditional physical therapy? Some of them are doing, I don't know,
it's a mix,
or stretching or what?
A full,
and I know you do, and you do dry needling too, right?
Yep. Yeah. Dry needling a lot of times like is filled in like with the session, right? Or we will have people like who have a dry needling block where we block out 20, 30 minutes for that. But, full schedule typically for a PT is going to be 6 to 8 visits in a day. And that's an hour. Those are hour-long treatment sessions. We do 2 30-minute treatment sessions as well. As far as like our assisted stretching stuff, like our physical therapists aren't doing the assisted stretching. That's more, again, of a wellness service. So I have PTAs, massage therapists, personal trainer right now, doing those services. But because like financially, it doesn't make sense for me to have a PT doing that, just because we charge less for it, right? We charge typically around 120 an hour really for those. So anywhere from like 45 to 55, 60 a half hour for sessions. So it just doesn't make it. If my PTs want to do it now based on that model, they can go get trained and I'll pay them and they can sign the CEU form and everything like that. But it really just doesn't make financial sense to have them doing that when they could make more and be more full seeing for a physical therapy block, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Let's wrap things up. We talked about a lot of things. I would love to, I don't know, figure out a way to do something together. Somehow, I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know if
you talked about this like conglomerate, right? Of like, would you rather,
go ahead.
So it was like, would you rather own a small percentage and be a part of like have a small percentage of a very big organization, right? Like piece of the pie, or would you rather have like a larger ownership percentage? Was that it? Or
yeah, exactly. Thank you for bringing that up. We'll try to cover it real quick and leave things efficient. So every owner that I know, every colleague is like you and I. So that's the biggest challenge to this, right? And I didn't speak to my other colleagues directly about this, but like, Tribeca Physical Therapy, Christian Marshall, Adam Gavilli has his new location in New York City, Pelvic NYC. Gina Williams does mobile, plus she's got a location in Manhattan. I think that like we're already to scale. Like all these owners are like, they're already like, they have things dialed in. They understand, like they have so much dialed in terms of processes and growth and experience and all that. Could we package all of us up together? But then the challenge is like everyone is like you said, like you're like, how can I keep fuel? Like I want to grow fuel. But they all say the same thing. They're like, Christian wants to keep Tribeca PT, and Adam probably wants to keep Pelvic NYC, and Gina probably wants to keep Mobility Health Physical Therapy as the brand name, which there is a group that's in network that does this, USPH. So they're a public company based out of Houston, and they have close to 1,000, maybe more than 1,000 in network practices. And their model is to keep the mom and pop local brand name. And no one even knows that it's owned by a public company probably until they look at a receipt or something at the bottom, or, some EOB or whatever. And they're like, oh, this is owned by USPH. It's not Hamilton Physical Therapy Services. It's owned by USPH and it's a public company. So I think most people don't even realize it. So it's a really big company. They have tight margins, as you can imagine, because of being in network. We can demonstrate and maintain larger margins because basically we can raise our rates whenever we want, all of us, right? So we have more flexibility there, although most folks are going to be paying more out of pocket sometimes for our services per visit or per experience compared to in-network. So that's my let me throw that back to you. So we got a bunch of practice owners, even if it's across the country. We got Eric Otero, Zia Dadul, Brett Scott, Joey Rossi, all these practice owners, more, that I can even mention. But everyone wants to keep their own brand name. So then that's a conundrum. So what will we do?
Like Select Medical also, they have, when they go buy people up, or even Alliance Physical Therapy, right? They have multiple brand names under this umbrella. So I think you could create like an overarching like one, and then
regional
you have, you could have like they are a part of whatever, like concierge pain relief or fuel or whatever, under this like larger organization. And then you have like, right, a small piece of the pie, but then basically what you're buying into, and maybe when you create this, like you're buying into a certain percent of ownership of like the larger piece of the pie. So then when you go and pick up more clinics, like you own that little percent of that, or whatever percent that kind of you buy in. And like the people who are on the ground floor, right, like probably have a bigger stake than those who are like opting in. I'm actually like looking at kind of doing this kind of thing with, we kind of hit that with some local and smaller places where it's like they want to grow and scale. But part of the issue with like the mom and pop stuff, you got to identify the right people that have the drive. And then two, that's the number one thing. And do they fit like your overall vision and whatnot and fit in well with your culture? But showing them the resources that they'll have that like they don't have to go do. So like HR stuff, billing and payroll, all of those things, because when you're the sole provider and you're wearing all the hats, like it's fun the first year or second year, but then it just starts to wear on you. It's like, I don't want to fill out this, like, I don't want to do this again. Like, so you have these tasks that just like you don't care to do, but you have to do because you're wearing all the hats. So how many hats do you want to wear? I think is ultimately what it comes down to. Are you willing to delegate or pay other people to help solve some of these problems, which I think that there's power in numbers. I think that that's how these big organizations like grow, is they get very good at delegating tasks, at solving problems and stuff. And you can only solve so many problems as one person versus a group of people are going to be much more effective at solving more and more problems. So I'm definitely more open at this stage in the game. If you would have talked to me 5 years ago, it's like, oh, I want 100% ownership. And now it's like, right. I'll take 10%. I mean, I'll take 10, 20, whatever. Like, hey, how much effort do I got to put in? And I'll take that percentage depending on what the other person wants to put forth. So yeah.
Last thing about this is like physical or private equity companies kind of do stuff like this. They call it like rollover equity. So like, let's just say hypothetically, a big private equity backed whatever company, or they come in, they buy a physical therapy business, or they buy any business, but they'll buy physical therapy practice, and they'll say, all right, we're gonna buy your practice for $1 million. So you get, the purchase price is $1 million, but you're gonna get $500K in cash, and the other $500K you have to roll over the equity. You have to roll it into this acquisition, this portfolio company, this holdco or topco, and then all the other owners have to do the same type of thing. Obviously it depends on their revenue and their scale and their size and their number of employees and all that. So it's not just like a certain percentage or whatever, but a lot of the private equity companies do want to have the sellers roll like maybe 20%, 15, 20, 25, maybe 30%, kind of in that window. They roll that into the buying company entity. And it for a couple things. One is it decreases risk for them, because then the owner is kind of made to stick around and continue to kind of hustle and do all the stuff with like community events, like you mentioned, and, growth and, mentoring and coaching their team members and all that. So that's like one of the big reasons. So that's one way where the rollover equity kind of like it dangles the carrot for the seller. And at the same time, they might even be able to have like two exits. It's like they get bought out a little bit, and then down the road, the private equity firm will then buy out the rest of that 15, 20, 25, whatever percent. And I've had owners on here that have done that have talked about that, where they got some amount, they got 70, 80% of their equity bought out at the first transaction. And then the buying entity got so big in the next 7 or 8 years or whatever, that when they bought out the rest of their 20%, it was a similar check size than the first 70%. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. No, that makes sense. It kind of makes sense for both parties, right? Where it's like you got to roll that money over so that like that way they keep some of that money where they can continue to invest and grow. And the hopes is right to grow that money and then pay it out a little bit later, and just so they're not like paying out a ton of money right away. That makes sense. I would say it depends on the situation of it. Like if I were to do something like that, I definitely want to run it by probably an attorney who's done a lot of these before and understand the risks and benefits and everything like that. Because these deals can definitely get complicated, right? There's all sorts of ways to make a deal and stuff. So And I think that ties back into, what we initially talked about of like you having these coaching clients, and would it have been beneficial for you to say, hey, here's what we do for the coaching, like you pay X amount, but then we get 10% of the company, 20%, 25, whatever, and you create this portfolio, right? They call that, what is it, like an equity transaction or something. That I'm drawing a blank right now, but and I've
like consulting for equity.
Yeah, consulting for equity. Yes, yep, exactly. Which I think it can work really well when it works really well, but then if you end up with a business and the owner's a nightmare to work with, and it drives it into the ground at year out, you basically lost a lot of time and money. Not necessarily money, but you lost a lot of time.
Yeah, it would just be the time.
Yeah.
But if it was paid consulting, it's like the paid consulting covers the time, and then it's really like potentially just upside. But anyway.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the best way to go. It's like there's a fee that you're going to get paid each month on top of like the 10%. Maybe it's a lesser fee, and I'm making 10% up, right? But yeah.
Always fascinating, always good times catching up with you. Cheers to your continued growth. Cheers to our potential, upcoming, who knows, portfolio.
I think we need to have definitely some more conversations, because I think that this is like a way to grow. I do think it's a way to grow and improve healthcare. And control things for ourselves versus a bunch of private equity who've never been involved in healthcare, right? I think that's where you see a lot of healthcare businesses, and a lot of even PT businesses where they get a bad rap is like you get this private equity that's never done healthcare. They come in, they do it for all the business reasons, try to make it super profitable, but then it creates a bad culture and affects results and things like that versus being done by people who've been there, done that. I think that can be a pretty powerful thing. And I think that just there's so much going on with healthcare in the United States right now in how it's changing, and the focus of just becoming healthier and trying to improve the business model. I'm going to say that now is a very, very good time to do those kind of things.
Last thing I want to say is I have some cash. I could have financed this second location of your fuel location, and it's my fault because I don't want to say it's a missed opportunity. You use credit cards, it's fine. But you still own 100%. So great. Like you get the upside. You risked money and time and effort and all that. So if there's anyone watching or listening out there in the interwebs, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, YouTube, whatever, if you find this interesting, if you are like Eric, maybe you're earlier on, maybe you're, I need you to be doing at least, a couple $100K in revenue. I need you to have some.
How many years in business are you looking for?
I mean, you got to be in business at least 3 years. Like,
so 3 years in business, and then at least any certain amount of employees.
Well, in terms of, so if we're going to buy a practice, we don't want to buy a practice unless it's got like 4 physical therapists or more, because if, we buy it and then if there's a click, if 1 or 2 therapists leaves, like it's a problem. Like there's like a massive hole in the ship. If we're going to buy it, meaning if I'm going to take my money or go, get an SBA loan or whatever and finance that deal and use, our law firm that's like too expensive because it's a law firm in New York City. If we're gonna do all that, it's got to be 4 physical therapists. If we're talking about this type of deal where it's like we're gonna kind of figure out I'll put some money up and for your next location or whatever, that decreases my risk. So maybe it's just my own capital. Maybe I don't use the SBA loan program, or I don't use commercial debt or whatever. So 3 years in business, I don't know, at least 300K in revenue or more, and you got to give me some war stories. You got to give me some, some stories from the trenches, crazy patients, challenging employees, all that, to potentially do this. But who knows? Like maybe we'll do this for fuel, the 3rd location.
Yeah. 2026. It's crazy. It's June. I mean, 2026 is only 6 months away. So, let's definitely carry this conversation. And I would I appreciate your time as always on these. These are always fun to talk about, and it's crazy to think. I mean, we started talking to each other 7 years ago. So I think when I met you, and you're like, "Hey, make this happen," and I told you, "Do you remember this?" I'm like, "I got the legal team coming on. Like, can I, from my W-2 like day job? I'm like, is this gonna work?" And you're like, "Yeah, you need to be careful with that." Like, oh man, it all worked out though.
All worked out. You were, I mean, it was hard to know who's going to succeed or not back then, but like there was a lot of signs, so it's not really a surprise at this point. Let's talk more. Let's do more of this. If you want to chat, if you want to bring other people into the conversation, this is a private conversation typically that you approve to be public. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome.
I'm for the most part a fairly open book and everything, but yeah, it was fun.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE at CONCIERGE painrelief.com, or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.